to another episode of Controlled Alt Access. It is a video game accessibility video and audio podcast. I am one of your hosts, Laura. I'm here, as ever, with my lovely co-host, Arevya. Hi, how you doing?
Hi, how are you doing, Laura?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I've been on vacation. I
Yeah,
feel
you
well
have.
rested.
You're feeling better for a bit of just not being in the middle of work all the time.
Yes, believe it or not, somebody once said that like if you feel like you're closing into burnout, you should take a vacation. And believe it or not, it actually helps.
Not doing the thing that's burning you out for a bit
Yes.
prevents you burning out. That's
Yes.
mind-blowing information. I
I
should really
know.
try that sometime. Oh, so yeah, we're back. We got more video game accessibility to talk about because that keeps on happening.
Yeah.
You've been away for a bit. Do you wanna start with what you've been up to while you're away?
Yeah, I've been like, I have had the most like best slash like boring when it comes to gaming vacations ever. I were literally with my family, like my soon to be husband's family, for 2 weeks. It was absolutely lovely. That was like the fun part, seeing them again. But I did take with me my Steam Deck. I didn't touch it once. I did.
Yeah.
I went back to like traditional gaming. I did Sudoku for
Ooh.
2 weeks. I kid you not, every single morning I woke up, I ate my breakfast, and I took like the newspaper and I
Mm.
did all the like number things in the newspaper. That was the most gaming I did. And like, to be honest, it was needed. I needed a bit of like a break and coming back with more motivation. So yesterday, when I was my first day back from vacation, I did so much magical
Yeah.
I can't speak. Magical del no, how do you say that word?
Magical delicacy.
So I am on vacation. My brain is still on
Mm.
vacation. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did that game. I started that game yesterday and it was so much fun. I had like hours upon hours upon hours with like just chilling, doing some of the things, being like impressed with the accessibility of that game, being impressed that when you started the game, it popped up like asking you, do you want to continue or do you want to go into the accessibility screen? All these little things just made me happy. It's just something I have. I always have a really, really big soft spot for indie games, and to
Mm.
see somebody that is an well, yeah, it's an indie game, doing so much and understanding their own game, which I
Mm.
think is important. It's not just like they haven't just slapped on something and say like, well, this is accessibility. It's just like they have looked at their game and said, hey, these are the problems I think our players will come over. So here is a ways we can go around it or above it. And it worked. It was really, really fun. I had fun. I can't wait to play it after work today. So yeah. How about you
Yeah.
then?
I've been playing Magical Delicacy as well.
Yes.
For anyone who doesn't remember this, we talked about it before. It's a sort of side-scrolling pixel art game in which you are a witch in your early 20s
Yeah.
who has moved to a new town and is doing magic via the medium of cooking recipes for people around the town.
Yes.
And there was some really neat accessibility stuff in there that I do think is really well done.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that accessibility menu on first boot. I really like a lot of the stuff they do with platforming, of making platforms that disappear if you don't jump off them fast enough able to become permanent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good
And
stuff with like high contrast visuals that I really like in
yeah.
there.
And I take
Uh,
away quick time events because even though
yeah,
I didn't necessarily need it for accessibility yesterday, it was more also because it got a bit boring because it's a bit,
yeah.
you do the same quick time event a lot. And it was just like at some point I was just like, I have done this at least 100 times now. I can do, I'm okay with like jumping over
Yeah,
this.
it's sort of the way I felt about some of the QuickTime button interactions in Pine Hearts, where I was
Yep.
like, at a certain point, they just didn't feel like they were adding anything to the experience, and it was nice to
Yep.
have the option to turn them off.
Yep.
Um, I also really enjoyed Magical Delicacy with a caveat. I really struggled with the start of that game.
Yes.
Because that game has a very linear intro where you arrive in town, you're taken to the shop where you're going to be cooking your recipes, you cook your specific first recipe, and then they just sort of let you loose in town to go
Yep.
find some people who need things cooked for them and work out where to find the things. to cook those first few recipes.
Yeah.
And I got really stuck in that early section for a lot longer than I was enjoying.
Yeah.
In that it sort of lets you go without a lot of signposting you to very important mechanics or getting you a bit of a rolling start on where to get started on some of those first recipes.
Yes.
And I struggled a bit with that, and it's one of those things. I did eventually get over that section, and the game opened up, and it came into itself a lot more, and once it started to open up a bit more, I enjoyed the game a lot more. But there was an early section that I struggled with, and I know at least part of that is because I was playing it before release at a time where I couldn't just check a walkthrough or a guide to
Yes.
find whatever it was I was stuck on.
It is sadly
Yeah.
still that though. So I also got a bit stuck because I did the bad mistake, and this isn't a spoiler, but like you can plant stuff and like gardening, and I gardened everything I had in my inventory because you could do that, and I was just like, oh, my Stardew brain was just like, oh, should garden. Then I didn't have anything to cook anything. And then I was just like, okay, but I'm stuck now for 2 days because I just need to wait. And there is no way you then can progress. So, yes, the game in the start have a bit of a... it has a bit of a... the way the game is like chugging along isn't in... The pace of the game isn't done in the best way.
You can dead-end yourself at least temporarily in some awkward ways in the start. I had the opposite problem. I bought some new things for my kitchen, like to be able to chop things up and grind things, and I experimented with a couple of my ingredients, and then realized I didn't know how to find more of that ingredient, and I needed that ingredient that's now been made into a salad for a recipe, and couldn't like plant it to grow more because I chopped up the last one I had and didn't know where more of them were.
Yeah, I wish the game just like held your hand a bit longer, and then because in the start it was really good at that. It's a pacing thing. It's a maybe an inexperience thing. It feels like you haven't talked enough to people playing your game to actually that don't understand your mechanics.
It feels like something was missed in playtesting in terms of like that early tutorialization. Because things like that garden that you can plant things in, the game doesn't tell you it's there. You have to go out of your way and stumble upon it, and it's really easy to potentially miss, for example.
Yeah.
But I think
if a game makes you want to have that feature of just stumbling upon the things, you need to be really, really precise on how you, with your environment and design, guides your characters. So, and that is a tricky way, and you then need, because I think you can never know what you don't know. So if you have learned something, you can never understand how it is not understanding it. So that is why it's so important having place testers, and this is a good show of that, because you as a developer goes like, but that makes sense because that is just how it is, but you don't understand what you didn't know. And it's a hard thing to learn. But this game is on Xbox Game Pass, which like I didn't pay for it, like then I just downloaded and tried it. I think it's still worth it if you like these kind of cozy games, but just be wary about it.
Yeah, and I think there is a really great game in there. It's worth trying to push through that early section, but it's worth also being aware, be very precise about what you do with that first set of ingredients you're given. Until you've gotten
look up a tutorial. Like, there is no shame in that. Like, if you want to just like get through the first part until the map opens up a bit more.
So those are all the things you've played, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I'll throw out a couple of things I've been playing as well. Then where shall I start? So this is not a genre I usually play, but this was a game that was doing some interesting accessibility stuff. I played part of the beta weekend that went on for Concord, which is PlayStation's first-party first-person hero shooter that they've got coming out. This is the one that if you saw their State of Play not that long ago, was very like Guardians of the Galaxy aesthetic in terms of its sort of sense of humor in its cutscenes. It is a 5v5 online hero shooter where your main modes are your team of 5 has to shoot the other team of 5 at least 30 times to score points before time runs out. Or there's a mode that is be in the control point, but your characters don't respawn, so being in the control point to try and take it over is very risky, because if you get killed, you'll be gone.
Yeah.
Not hugely my genre, but there was some really interesting accessibility stuff it was doing.
Oh, cool.
And the two big positives I want to talk about is the entire user interface, or the UI elements in the game, could be made very large. You can take up almost 2/3 of the screen if you want, with very large mini-map and health bar and notifications, and do a very large job of increasing the size on those things. I do wish you could increase the size of individual UI elements rather than just a single slider that makes them all larger, if, say, you only need your minimap to be a bit larger, but I appreciate that they let you scale everything up quite that big.
Yes.
The other thing I really like is that they have coloured outlines you can put around characters that you can customize the colour of, so you're like, oh, I see blue, I know that's my team, I see red, I know that's the opponent's team.
Yeah.
But you can also make those outlines really, really, really thick,
Nice.
to the point that it's very close to like traditional high contrast mode implementations, which is really nice because I very rarely see that degree of contrast visibility options offered in online multiplayer modes.
Yep.
Call of Duty, for example, lets you have high contrast now, but only in single player. And it was really nice to see an online multiplayer game go, hey, we can give you really big contrast options for seeing the other team, and that doesn't break an online competitive game.
I can sort of hear the comments section on this feature being like, why would you need this? Because it takes away like the prettiness of the game. And I think it's important to just say that, like, with things that we can make like ridiculously big on screen, people that needs that don't care about the prettiness because they need it. It's a thing I often see people go like, but you are taking away from the designer of the game, or you are having your minimap, whatever, above some other information on screen. And to be honest, I would rather have a minimap than to look at a pretty flower.
I really appreciated the big UI stuff because I really struggle to remember to look away from like the center of a screen when I'm focusing on a game like this, particularly one where I like can't pause. Having the UI be really big meant that it was in my periphery and I wasn't forgetting it was there, and I was making a lot more use of it, which was really, really appreciated. There was one negative with the accessibility that I really hope we see improve before the game releases fully at the end of August. And the big issue was subtitles and how they're timed. In cutscenes, I recorded footage of sometimes subtitles not appearing until over 5 seconds after their counterpart spoken dialogue had happened.
No.
Which is a problem for the way I usually use subtitles, because I listen while reading so that I have two sources of input I can follow at once.
Yes.
And obviously you can't do that if they're not in sync with each other. But it's also a problem if you're just using subtitles by themselves, which I did for a while. I muted and was like, I'll just follow the subtitles so I'm not being confused by reading something different to what I'm hearing. And then the problem was they have speaker tags for who is speaking, but I would read a subtitle and then look up and no one's mouth was moving, so I couldn't work out which character was named what, because I read the speaker tag and no one was speaking, so I couldn't put a name to a face.
Yeah.
So
that sounds like a bug, though.
I don't know whether it's a bug or whether it's just not something they've put a lot of priority into, or... Part of me wonders if it's because I turned the subtitles quite large, and part of me wonders whether it's like the amount of space they have on screen for subtitles is limited, and if you make the subtitles larger, it's sort of lags behind itself in trying to show them. I need to mess around with that more, but whatever the cause, something was funky with the subtitles that was a bit of an issue. But yeah, Concord, not usually my genre, but I very much appreciated what it was doing.
That's good.
Other games I can talk about this one quickly. This is a very strange game I played this week. I played a game called Clickolding, which is from Xavier Nelson, who is the developer behind such games as an airport for aliens currently run by dogs. He makes very silly, strange little games. And this game is about You are in a motel room, and there is a man sat in a chair in the corner wearing a horse mask who hands you a little clicker that you click and a number goes up, and he would like you to click it 10,000 times so that it goes back to zero, and he will give you money for some surgery you need. And the implication is that he's asking you to rhythmically do something alone in a hotel room. You know, he might tell you to change the pacing of what you're doing. You can sort of get the implication of what it's trying to be. Very interesting game. It's like 30 or 40 minutes long. It tells a very interesting story with a very limited amount of assets. It's just one room, one person in a chair, and a clicking mechanic. From an accessibility perspective, the obvious issue is it's a game that requires you to click your left mouse button 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And that comes with some issues. I don't think the narrative would be inherently any less impactful if the game offered some kind of, like, hold mouse button to click repeatedly at a certain pace, or some kind of accessibility option like that to do so. I get that the mundanity and the repetition is part of the intended experience, but it's worth telling people it's an interesting game, but it's an interesting game if you are gonna be okay with 10,000 mouse clicks, and that's not gonna cause you issues.
Yes.
I believe this has been changed now. Previously, you had to play the game in a single sitting. You couldn't, like, save and come back. And that makes the 10,000 click problem way worse.
Yes.
I don't know if it's implemented yet, but I did see the developer talking about the fact that they are implementing save functionality. So that would help a lot, just being able to put it down, come back to it, and not have it monopolize your computer.
Yeah, and I also seen the dev because I have heard about this game. I did not know what it like. The reason why I started laughing so much because I did not know what it was about. I've just seen the developer pop off on Twitter, and seems to be one of those people who actually respond to both positive and criticism. So it might be a possibility to get updates there.
I think he's aware of the critiques, and I have hope that it'll be a little more accessible. But if you think you can do 10,000 mouse clicks, it is a very interesting game from a person who makes curious, weird little projects.
Yes.
And then I think the last one I'll probably talk about today is a game called Bokura, which I'd been seeing on TikTok for months and trying to remember to make time to play through. This is a co-op game. It is a side-scrolling puzzle game in which you and another person are playing two children who are trying to climb a hill with some fireworks to blow up a statue of the mayor. And along the way, you see the corpse of a deer in the woods, and everything goes a bit strange, and suddenly you're both seeing different versions of the world. One of you is seeing the world as a sort of colourful, cartoon, animal-filled, colourful world. One of you is seeing it as this very sort of cold, mechanical, robotic landscape. And you have to solve puzzles where you're seeing different things from the other person. An example of this might be maybe the player in the sort of colourful animal world sees a chain they need to climb up, but it's not in the right position. They need it moving to the side. So they might tell you, can you move that chain over to the side? And then the other player will look at their world and go, I don't see a chain, I do see a box. And they move the box and, the box was the chain, that moves the chain. It is a game that's a lot about communication and working out how to explain what you're seeing and what you need to someone whose world doesn't line up with what you're experiencing. Fascinating game. Definitely a game you need to play with someone that you know you have. You're not going to get frustrated if you have communication mismatches with. You need to be very comfortable about, like, I'm trying to explain something and you're just not getting it, and that won't be something that stresses us both out.
Yeah. You won't, like, throw the table. Anger of that,
And I would say, if you're playing this, whoever ends up playing the colourful animal side of this will have a slightly more... There'll be a little bit more emotional whiplash involved. there is some shock value of violent, gross thing happen in colorful aesthetic that occasionally happens. That is,
Yeah.
if you're playing this with someone, maybe discuss which of you would be more comfortable with that and which of you would rather avoid that.
Yeah.
But it's like 4.5 hours long. You can play it in like a single afternoon. It's frequently on sale. Like, I think me and my wife got a copy for £2.50 each, so it was like £5 for us to both have a copy to play together. And there is value in playing through it twice. Like, we played through and then played through again, swapping, so we were seeing the other side of the puzzles.
Yeah.
Very interesting game. One that I would definitely recommend checking out for people looking for light puzzling and narrative communication sort of co-op experience.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think things like that, and it's really, really cool to see when people stream games like that. It's a good co-op streaming game.
Yeah, it seems like it would be very good for that. So yeah, that's everything I played this week. Shall we move on to the news?
Let's go!
In this week's news, Gamescom commits to event accessibility. Accessibility talks run by Jozef Kulik and Cari Waterton at Develop. Nothing without us. Star Citizen devs discriminated by refusing work from home. And TwitchCon doing better on accessibility.
Yes, shall we start at the top?
Yeah, let's start at the top. So, Gamescom are making commitments for game accessibility at their events, and that is really cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
For anybody who don't know, Gamescom is, well, to say the biggest game developer game convention we have. They have 350,000 attended each year.
It's definitely like the big one for public facing, go play a bunch of demos
Yes.
sort of events. It was up there with E3. E3 was sort of more press focused, and this is like a couple of months later in the year. This is the public facing version of E3, really.
Yeah.
It happens in Cologne, Germany every August. And before we get into the new stuff they're committing to, I can give a little bit of background on this because I've been to Gamescom before. The last couple of years I've been to Gamescom, Xbox have been doing a bunch of really good accessibility stuff on the show floor at Gamescom that seems to be the blueprint for what Gamescom as a whole is looking to do going forward. So the one thing they're committing to and making sure that like has to be followed by all of their exhibitors is that any bits of Gamescom's show floor that require going up onto a higher level need to be step-free. They need to have wheelchair accessibility, and one of the things that's really good here is they're talking about specifics of that. They're not just going have a ramp, they're saying your incline can't be more than 10% incline, you need to have handrails for safety, bevel your steps up to 2 centimeters, tape off trip hazards, lots of like the actual specifics of how you make good wheelchair accessibility, which is something
that is important.
Yeah,
it's really, really important. If you can't just say do this, because what we will then see is a lot of people trying their best with good intentions but not knowing what they're doing because they have never been in that situation, and doing things like ramps with like 15 degrees incline and people can't use it, and it's not safe to be used. So they were actually giving us a guide on like how you are supposed to do this.
Yeah, for anyone who's not looked into the specifics of wheelchair ramps previously, you need to make sure that they're not overly steep. You need to make sure that they have edges to them and are wide enough that someone isn't having to like thread the needle with their wheelchair or risk falling off the ramp. You need to... There's a lot of stuff you need to do to basically like give additional clearance and additional room, and if someone misses the edge of the ramp slightly, have you accommodated for that, and will their chair still be safe? Will they risk being injured? It's really good that that's all being taken into account. A lot of the other stuff that Gamescom has talked about is recommendations, that they're not making requirements yet. I would love to see in the future some of these become requirements rather than recommendations, but it's still good that they are like officially telling people you should probably be doing these, you should probably aim for this,
Yeah.
including height adjustable gaming terminals with tilting screens, again, so
Yes.
that wheelchair users can have, say, a desk lowered down to them to play at the right height.
Yep.
There should be plenty of space for larger wheelchairs to navigate around the stand. Stages and photo opportunities should be accessible. There should be reserved areas in front of stages and separate queues for people who use mobility aids. That one I really like to see. That is being considered. There should be there's a whole bunch of other things. Non-slip flooring, seating provided, avoiding obstacles in pathways, having accessible controllers available for people. Make sure you have sufficient lighting for people who have low vision, tactile floor elements, providing information in Braille, having sign language available on stages and live streams, a whole bunch of really good recommendations that basically follow a lot of Xbox's playbook for accessible gaming events that we talked about a while back. Their big document of here's how you can make your events accessible, and I'm really glad to see events taking that document on board.
And I'm also really curious because what I know is that the people that are coming here and making stands here are some of the smartest and biggest brains we have in the industry. Yeah. They are creative people who is the best you can get. And I am really, 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 really curious to see how their brain will work inside the barriers they've gotten now. Like these are the new lines you need to follow these. How will they work around it? Because there are so many things you can do. When I saw some of the feedback, people were like, oh, but now everything will look stale and boring. Because whenever people think about accessibility, they think about hospital and your grandma's house. Like, that is what people think about, and I can understand that, but accessibility can be so much more. Accessibility can be part of your design. They can show how you can make it part of your booth. This is a way for the best and the brightest to show why they have that, why they are known to be the best and the brightest. Xbox have shown it's possible for years, and now it's other people's time to actually shine, and I can't wait to get information.
Yeah, people think of accessibility as cold and sterile, but and I think a big part of that is because all too often accessibility tools are really expensive and the cheapest ones are the cold and sterile boring ones. And, you know, so rarely do people who aren't disabled or aren't in accessibility spaces see, for example, I recently met someone who had a really cool cane that glowed and sort of shimmered in rainbow colors and that they could program on their phone to change the colors on. I was like, that's really cool. Accessibility doesn't have to be boring. It can be it can be integrated in really fun ways.
Yes.
But yeah, on that note of accessibility, I do still think that, like, Xbox is the gold standard of event accessibility stuff I've seen. Like, other things I can point out that they've done at Gamescom before that I think were really cool. They have specific staff on their booth wearing shirts with the game accessibility logo, the sort of game controller crossed with a wheelchair, that are like, hey, these staff know about accessibility. Everyone on the booth knows about accessibility. We've given them all training, but these ones specifically, if you come and ask an accessibility question, they will have the answer. They're like your accessibility specialists. They're easy to find. They have like a quiet space that you can go to just away from the booth, that's like away from the bustle of the crowd. They have things like earplugs available if you're getting overstimulated by noise at Gamescom. Xbox are really on top of this stuff, and it's really nice to see Gamescom seemingly go, we should learn from what they've been doing.
Yeah, and I think there will be people that gets annoyed this first year, and then it will just be part of the normal routine of going to Gamescom. Is when you go there, you make this. Hopefully that also will trickle down to when game developers and people who have stands go to other events. They will continue doing that because it's starting to be integrated. It's so normal to think about. It's sort of how whenever I talk to somebody doing web design, accessibility is just part of it. They always think about it because it's the standard. It's been that for many, many years. And in many countries is the law. So they just think about it. It's not never anything that you can cut out or something you do in the end. You always think about it because it is just part of what is required of you. And I hope this will inspire to that will continue in this industry as well.
Agreed. Other stuff that's happened this past couple of weeks. I went to a lovely event that went on in Brighton here in the UK recently. Jozef Kulik from Splash Damage and Cari Waterton from Rebellion, who we've talked about both of them before. They both gave really interesting talks at GA Conf this year.
Yeah.
Put on an event not officially part of Develop, but during Develop, which is the UK's big video game developer conference. It goes on in Brighton every year in the summer, and they put on an event that was at the same time as Develop. It was happening at Unity's headquarters down in Brighton.
Yeah.
And they put on a little afternoon of micro talks, so a bunch of 15 to maybe 30-minute long talks from a bunch of people about video game accessibility. And it was a really lovely event. I was there, and I will give a quick rattle through some of the talks that happened. I don't know if these are going to be made available online later or not, but if nothing else, it's a good opportunity to know about some cool people that are worth following who have some interesting insights.
Yes.
So the first one was a talk called Open Worlds and ADHD, A Tale of Love, Pain and Opportunity. This was a talk being done by Ameline F. Chiazon, who is the accessibility lead at Player Research. This was a really, really good talk that largely I related to a lot as a person with ADHD in terms of talking about the experience of picking up a big open world game and dropping off it before it's finished, and the sort of the allure of big open world games for appealing to the ADHD and scratching an itch, and why people with ADHD often fall off of them, and the guilt spiral that makes it difficult to jump back into them when you've fallen off them after a while. I was a little disappointed that the talk, like, personal disappointment, the talk brought up Hogwarts Legacy in a way that felt kind of unnecessary to the point being made, and I was like, that's a little shame. But overall, I think the talk was very insightful and one that is worth checking out. There was a second talk that was Skill Tree Unlocked from Consultant to In-House, which was given by Stacey Jenkins, who is the Accessibility Design Specialist at Ubisoft. This was maybe the most interesting talk to me of the day. This is the one I feel like I learned the most from. It was a talk that was maybe 15 minutes long and really focused on when Stacey went from being like a one-off consultant for accessibility on projects to being an in-house part of the development team accessibility specialist. The biggest change that they experienced was the big skill I need to really ramp up in is not my accessibility knowledge or understanding. It is soft skills, as they're called. Your sort of people management skills, the skills required in being part of a team and working out how to navigate getting the thing you're passionate about and know a lot about to be something that other people in other departments care about.
Oh, that one. I can even just hearing it. It just like, oh, I should have listened to that one.
If that talk isn't made available, I would really recommend like reaching out to Stacey and like asking to talk about that topic, because it was a really good insight into how do you basically get people who might not otherwise care about accessibility to take on board when you say something is important, and to feel ownership of it, and to not feel like you're pushing it onto them as work that is an obligation, and how you navigate not feeling like not making them feel like you're an outsider coming in demanding things of them. Yes. And it was a really, really interesting talk that I feel like I learned a lot from. A couple of other ones we can go through quickly. There was a micro talk by Bianca Marina Stana from Unity, talking about some of the built-in tools that Unity has available for people to do accessibility stuff in their engines. That is worth checking out, but I'm sure you can find other resources about that. Those are tools already available in Unity. Chloe Patricia Hodgson gave a talk about the feature procedure, finding accessibility priorities. This was kind of similar in a way to the talk that Cari Waterton gave at GA-Conf earlier this year, about finding ways to teach people in workshop settings about accessibility. This one came from a different perspective and was 15 minutes or so of talking about a worksheet that could get people very quickly thinking about accessibility and solutions they might be able to implement, and the order of priority of what's an important barrier to tackle and a barrier we can quickly do something about. I will post online an image of the worksheet that was shared. It is a really good it's a really good resource for people who don't know much about accessibility to start creating numerical data they can look at and they can understand where are our priorities, where do we need to focus on, and to get people engaged on solving their own accessibility problems. There was a talk by the Wobbly Gamer, Matthew Alcock, about accessibility in social and competitive games. Again, absolutely fascinating every time he talks. He gave a wonderful talk at GA-Conf. There was definitely some overlap with his GA-Conf talk. Here, go watch his GA-Conf talk and then go ask him for more specifics. And the day basically ended with a big accessibility roundtable, and I really liked this. It was opened up to a lot of the floor for people to just have a mediated conversation as a room about some of the topics that had come up in the day, and it was a really good opportunity to get people in the room talking before the sort of social element at the end of the day. So yeah, this was like maybe 4 hours long total, this whole event, and it was a really good, very fast-paced, brisk batch of accessibility information. And if the event runs again next year, I would highly recommend people check it out.
Yeah, and if people have any, like, I wasn't at that event myself, but I saw Hannah Rutherford, or better known as Lumid. What is her name? Twitch name again?
Lamadia.
Lamadia, there we go. Made on LinkedIn a better, like, how they felt about accessibility at the develop. And the positive and also the negative things that needs to be addressed for next year. So if you have any like quotes about that, we can link to that post so you can learn a bit more about it. What Hannah felt going through that event and what they think should be absolutely done better for next year.
Definitely. Another one we can quickly talk about, and this is one where you can go watch all these talks later, which is really good. Molly Evans' Nothing Without Us happened since we last recorded, which we talked about was a digital and then a week later physical video game accessibility focused event happening during Disability Pride Month. I was there for the digital one and gave a talk, pre-recorded talk at the physical one. Absolutely wonderful event. Molly did a great job and put a bunch of really interesting conversations together. If you go look up at Little Motac, Little MOTAC on Twitch, you can find the VODs of both sets of talks. Absolutely a treasure trove of really good accessibility conversations. I won't go into too many specifics other than to say those talks are all online and they're free accessibility resources you can check out, and you should go check them out.
Yeah. In general, just really, really proud of her of doing this. It takes so much to put together an event, and she did too.
And particularly so proud of the physical event and how well it came together. Having found such an accessible venue, getting so many wonderful people that were there with stuff. It's a real shame I couldn't make it to the physical one because they had the BioWave Proteus controller there for people to check out, and I was like, oh,
I saw that.
I will eventually get to try that controller out. It seems so cool.
Molly also did a talk at GeoConf about like how can you make your event more accessible? What do you need to think about? And Molly has taken her years of experience as a content creator and being invited to a lot of events to knowing what should you not do. This is how it's been hard for me. So this is how I'm
Yeah.
going to then make it better. So
It's
kudos.
so nice to see that hardship put to good use and turned into a really positive event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But on a
This
bit more negative note then.
Well, I mean, it's a negative that turns into I would say, a really big positive, this one.
Yeah.
So, the developers of Star Citizen, Cloud Imperium Games, got in some trouble in the UK recently, but it sets a really good precedent. Basically, they had remote work during the peak of COVID. You know, all of their employees were encouraged to work from home. And like many businesses, they have started trying to heavily encourage workers to return to the office, as they're like, oh, we feel that COVID's not such a big deal anymore. In our opinion, you should come back to the office. And a disabled worker in the UK basically argued that they would like to keep working from home, that would be a reasonable accommodation for their disability. Senior programmer Paul Artheon basically said, hey, while I can physically work in the office, the commute plus the act of working in the office and then commute home means that I have no quality of life outside of work. It takes everything I have, and it basically means work has to become my entire life. I have no ability to do things outside of work because of this. It would improve my quality of life greatly if you allowed me to keep working from home. So he basically asked to be able to move to permanently working from home. His request was denied, and he was repeatedly told, you have to come back into the office or we will fire you. And in July of 2022, he was fired. That being said, he went to an employment tribunal and basically said that, like, I think this was unfair dismissal. My work from home has been of high quality. You know, the UK requires you make reasonable accommodations for disability. Cloud Imperium Games tried to argue his work had become lower quality since working from home, and that he wouldn't be able to do certain parts of the job, such as mentoring junior staffers when working remotely. But the tribunal found there was no specific issues with his work performance. They basically said, his work hasn't been any worse, and it seems like you are finding excuses to force him into the office. To read from their quote, the tribunal finds that the respondent's concern about the claimant's performance seemed rather retrospective, in the sense that while the claimant was employed, the respondent never formally investigated those concerns. So while he was working there, they never said, your work is getting worse, we need to do something about it. They only said it when he wanted to keep working from home. They gave no evidence that his work had gotten worse. And the tribunal basically said, firing this person for refusing to go back to working in the office was not a proportional response, and working from home was a reasonable adjustment which would have alleviated the substantial disadvantage to the claimant. That is a really big deal, because for a lot of people since, like, the peak of COVID, the argument they've been making is, you can let me work from home, you let me do it during the peak of COVID, and I'm telling you that would be a reasonable accommodation for my disability. This is an employment tribunal saying, yes, if the technology exists for a person to work from home and their work quality doesn't dip by doing so, letting them work from home is a reasonable accommodation for disability, a thing you are legally required to allow people.
Yes.
This
is why having, like, ADA or whatever you call it in your country is so important, which we technically doesn't have in Norway, which is so sad. We are like one of the countries in Europe who don't have.
It's one of the few things you don't have. Generally, you've got a lot good going on over there, but
and generally Norway is just like, meh. Yeah, all the rights. You get all the rights. Who cares? And then it comes to disability, and Norway is just like, well, actually, and gets, sorry to say, but pissy about it. And this is why it's so important. And myself as well, when I don't do game accessibility and stuff like that, I work in accounting and administration, and I don't see why you can't be working from home. With today's technology, everybody knows how to use Teams, everybody knows how to use Zoom, as long as like that is so you can, there isn't like an accessibility needs getting, because you have sometimes that someone else can't use that for their accessibility needs and you can get problems, but that is a 1 in a million case. Then you have to figure that one out.
If there is a specific conflict that creates an issue, it can be talked through, but generally speaking, for a lot of jobs, there is no reasonable reason you could not allow a person to work from home as a reasonable accommodation for disability. And as much as it sucks that this person was fired for this, I'm glad that they got compensated for being unfairly dismissed, and that they have seemingly created precedent that working from home is a reasonable accommodation for disabled people. That's a really big deal.
Come on, we're in 2024. We do not need to babysit our employees. Like, come on.
Yeah.
If you think somebody is not doing their job when they're at home, or think like they're doing something else, then they shouldn't have done it. You can see that in the numbers. You can see that, and then you can do the formal thing you're supposed to do, which is first and foremost, let them know about it, try to fix it. Let them know about it. Again, if it continues, trying to fix it, and then you can do something about it. But like, come on, we're in 2024. People don't need. And also, if people always get babysat, they will start thinking, well, why should I care when they aren't getting babysat? Like, you're making a problem for yourself. A lot of this is middle management needing an excuse to exist, and that excuse is babysitting people that's harder to do remotely. But if the work's getting done, then why should it matter? I am fully on the thing. If you need to go to the hairdresser in the middle of the day, it doesn't stop you from doing your work the rest of the day. Who cares? As long as you get the work done, who cares?
Who cares as long as the work gets done, honestly. But yeah, last up on the list, do you want to talk about TwitchCon? Because you were at TwitchCon.
I was. It's a long time since now, a month since now almost, but it's almost a month since we talked last. I thought it was nice to talk about it because I was impressed. I was massively impressed. Had some problems, but also massively impressed.
Well, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the problems or the massively impressed bit?
Let's start with the massively impressed, because I had, from previous years, read online that TwitchCon was horrible when it came to accessibility, and it was. That is just period. That is the final. It was. It had so many problems, and I was like, okay, let's go there and film my experience. And they started with like when you got your ticket, it said like accessibility. You sent them a mail, said you needed accessibility, and then you got a blue sticker on your badge. That blue sticker, or that blue dot, let everybody in the vicinity know that you needed accommodations. Not what you needed, but just that you needed accommodations, which is how it should be. You shouldn't need to defend yourself why you need things. So I came to TwitchCon. I did early badge pickup, which is the Friday. That was really, really easy. You had your own queue. You went to a lady was sitting there, and they were printing out your cards, which already had a blue dot on it. But I also saw that they had blue stickers. So I presume if you didn't, but they didn't talk about it anywhere. But I presume that if something went wrong, they could just manually put on a sticker. Yeah. The first problem started the next day. If you've ever been to an event of this size, even though TwitchCon isn't the biggest one, but any without over like 300 attendees will get chaos in the start. It's just how it is. The problem was that the badge pickup had a badge pickup sign, which said like accessible badge pickup. And then the next day, I went to accessible entrance, and the person there didn't let me in. And then they let me go to the other side of the thing. Came to the other side. The problem is that since my disabilities and chronic illness isn't visible, I started shaking violently. Both, and I was just like, I need to get in now. If not, I'm going to pass out. So luckily, I saw a crew, and because then I violently shook. The crew was just like, oh my God, we need to get you in now. And they just like tempered me through, and I was inside. I did tweet about it. I made like a long tweet about it, and I have gotten a lot of DMs of people saying that they think that might be that person that was denying me entrance was from another company. We have to give that. That was it, that person was from a security company.
Yeah.
So it wasn't TwitchCon themselves, and they only let in people with visible disabilities.
Yes.
So this is badly informed staff members on the event arena, not TwitchCon, but on the event arena, not being informed.
I've seen a few people with similar
experience,
feelings about security. I've seen some people who've said, like, it seemed to only, at least on day one, it seemed to only be wheelchair users who are allowed to use the accessible entrance. And again, external company, that is what it is, but there is a degree of requirement of, if you're putting an external person on an accessibility entrance, you need to make sure they know who, like, what the deal is.
Yeah, and in the end, it is a Twitch responsibility. If you outsource it, it's your name on it, it's still your responsibility. Yeah. So that was bad. That was really, really bad. I am pissy that I got discriminated against for not looking disabled. I hate that. And it's like everything with how I feel like I'm not worthy enough, that stems in that you're not good enough. And even when it comes to the quote unquote bad things, I'm not good enough. I'm not disabled enough. I'm not ill enough. And I hate it. It's like, it just let my inner low self-confidence scream at me, and I hate when things like that happens. Luckily, I got like my bootstraps on and I did all my mental
psyched yourself up.
Psyched myself up, and I've worked through the things I've learned to not making it ruin my day, but like that was not cool and should have been fixed. And what annoys me the most is that person just didn't say that I wasn't allowed. They said, hey, the sign is in the wrong place. And so they lied. And that is annoying, that they just lied. That was a horrible person. But came in inside into the Twitch arena where like people, they did like the bigger thing in the start. They had their own accessibility entrance. I saw that I didn't go there because I was like going really quick on the other line, and I went with some friends, but I saw some people having problems getting in. So the information about that accessibility entrance was a thing, was a bit like people didn't know, but it seems like none of them got denied. They were just like, oh, I didn't know, and then they let them in. So there is their own entrance to every place, which was nice. When I got to go and meet and greet, I got to meet little Simsy, which was really, really cool. I love her Sims stuff. I actually waited on the side of the queue. So there was like these lines up to each Twitch person you can meet, each streamer you can meet. And then there was like this normal zigzag line. And then on the side was where the accessibility entrance were. So what they did was that when I went up, I was also still a bit tired after everything happened that morning. And when I showed my badge, they were just like, let me follow you up so you know where you're going to stand. So they followed me all the way up. Then the person I was talking to turned around and said, hey, what do you need? And I was just saying, because they asked, do you want to just go and talk to little Simsy right now? And I was just like, no, I can wait in line. I don't want to like go in front of everybody else because I don't have any problems with waiting, so I can wait. And they said, what do you need? And can I get a bench? Can I sit down? And this person, small person, was just coming over with a big ass bench, going like Hulk, going in with a bench and setting it down and going like, I got you. And I was just like, whoa, yo. So I got this bench. I sat there for like 20 minutes, and then the TwitchCon crew came over and like, now it's your turn. You have like set the amount we assume you would have stand in line. And I got to say hi, and that was really, really cool. Well done. That is how you should do it.
I love the option of virtual queuing of like, hey, can I just like sit down somewhere nearby and wait how long the queue would have been and then do the thing? I know a lot of theme parks do that as an option, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. As long as I can just be sat and not in the middle of things, I'm perfectly happy to wait. Really glad they implemented that. That's lovely. It's
really, really cool. All the panels was like on the second floors, and there was a lot of them all the time, 3 different rooms running all of the con. They had seatings outside each door and queuing. So even if you were going to go into the merch store, Twitch merch store, they had like accessible queuing. So you just went over to the accessible sign, showed your badge, and you got in at once. You can also sit on these benches just waiting. So because they had to wait until they filled up the rooms.
Yeah.
And when you came into the rooms for the panels, all of the accessible chairs, which were a lot of them, I think around the rooms I was in was around 12 of them. So 3 in the front row and 3 sets in the back row. Where with like a big cloth with all the accessibility signs on it. So like accessibility sign for somebody in a wheelchair, somebody with a cane, that like the deaf sign, and also cognitive sign.
Ooh.
So yes, which I think is really cool that it didn't just use the wheelchair, because then a lot of people think, why are you sitting there, you're not in a wheelchair. It showed the diversity of accessibility needs. So you use it. They also, in the rooms where you could ask the panels questions, the chairs was also next to the microphone. So if you needed a microphone, you could just stand up. Brilliant. That's really good. It's really, really good. So then you had like 12 to 18 seats in each room that was marked out, depending on what you need. So I am quite fiddly. It hurts to me to sit, so I might need to like stand up and stuff like that. So I always sat in the back of the room, because then I felt like, well, I can stand up now if I need to do that, and I don't make any scenes. So really, really, really perfect. The problem with the panels though was that they were captioned, and they were like on your phone, so you get, which was cool. It was cool. It just didn't work. So the first day you got a notification on your TwitchCon app that said, "Hey, now captions are live." So that's cool. They absolutely promoted it. You went into the captions. They went to a web browser. The problem was at the web browser, the first day there were so many people there that your internet didn't go. So you just couldn't enter it, or if you entered it, it was really, 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 really slow. It just didn't work, sadly.
It's the kind of thing where it might have benefited from a separate network available that was just for, hey, do you have an accessibility badge? You have login information for this network that will be a bit quieter or something.
That's true. Yeah, they could have done that. They could have done that, because the problem was it didn't work. That's just how it is. This Sunday it did work better, but it was hard. And as anybody who has been on Twitch, live captioning isn't easy. And live captioning isn't easy anyways. Like, they are never perfect because it's live. But yeah, it worked a bit. effort maybe. Yeah. I think also it's important to say that they had what they called AFK rooms. So rooms where you could go in, low lighting, water coolers, puzzles, drawing. You can just sit in quietness. They also had nursing rooms for any parent who needed to nurse the children.
That is cool.
And changing rooms with lifts that could held a grown person. So actually human lifts, not just baby lifts.
that is, again, really good. Really good to see that actually taken seriously. That is something that's very rarely thought about by events.
Yes, so the changing rooms was not at the toilet, which can be like a bit problematic, but at least there was like, and there also were those changing beds. So like, so a full-grown human being can be changed there. Brilliant, absolutely loved it. I have never seen anybody having that, so kudos for them, 100%. I saw somebody saying, and this is it, if you get overstimulated by going to an event, AFK rooms are good, because I got overstimulated, needed to go in there just like calm my nerves and just calm myself. If just a lot of people is not for you, sadly this event isn't for you. At some point you can't just be there. Like, there will always be 100, if not more, thousands of people around you. Sadly, that is just part of it, but they tried, and I am really curious to see the improvements that they will hopefully make for Twitch San Diego.
Honestly, that there is a lot of positives to be said there, and like there's a couple of things that could be improved, but I'm surprised by how many positives you came away with, and that's really good to hear.
Yeah, really. And I even got to like say hi to Dan, which is the CEO of Twitch, and like said, hey, I do game accessibility, and he was just like, I know about that, we should do that better. And then I was just like, yes, you should. And he was just like, we're working on it. And I said, that's good. And then I had to leave because he was warned by people. But it was really, really cool. I will go again. TwitchCon was like on the cuff of, oh my God, my self-confidence is in shambles now because everybody around you are so good at what they do. And also, oh my God, I've never been so motivated to get my ass going and like do better.
I'm gonna make myself go next year. Like this year it was like if I'm not gonna end up being on a panel, I don't know if I can justify it. But next year I'm just gonna make it happen because if nothing else, it's an excuse for us to hang out and do stuff in person again.
Yes, and let's go together and let's have a panel together. There was one panel about accessibility. Using different controllers. But I would love, and they used like examples both for accessibility and non-accessibility examples, which I think is cool. But I would love to see an actual from disabled creators talking about accessibility.
Agreed.
We need that. Yes.
So yeah, I think that's all the news for this week.
Yes, it is.
Right, so we've done all the news for the week. Shall we do our question for this week?
Yes, last time we were together, we asked which games gives you summer vibes.
Did you have an answer for this you wanted to bring forward? Did you have a summer vibes game you want to talk about this week?
I actually have to say that for me, it is actually maybe not a game, but also a game. It's Super Mario Sunshine, which I've never played myself. I've never played it myself, but it gives me the summer vibes because games done quick. It's summer games done quick. It's just something about summer speed running and like sitting inside, having something good to drink. And like so many years I've been watching so much Super Mario Sunshine that it's just like when I see that game now, I'm just like, oh, it's summer. I almost smell the sunscreen when I see that game.
Yeah, I was thinking about answers to this, and I sort of surprised myself, because the first answer I came to was the original Kingdom Hearts. Because when I think about summer, I just think about that opening sequence from the first Kingdom Hearts, where you're spending a while on the little deserted island beach together. Yes. That is video game summer captured for me, is just... children having a little adventure on a beach, no problems to worry about, there's no grand adventure yet, it's just chilling on the sand together.
Oh, it reminds me of school days when you actually had summer breaks.
Yeah.
And summer breaks were filled with gaming and fun and chill. And I think that is what Games Done Quick brings to me, is just that like little breathing of like, woosah, now it's summer. Yeah. Ooh, I can breathe. But for next week, we're thinking the question, because we talked a lot about events today. So we are thinking, what's an accessibility accommodation that you appreciate being offered at an in-person event, or have been offered, or you would wish you would be offered?
Indeed. And if you would like to answer that question, you can reach out to us either with an answer to the question or with just any other sort of comment, question, or story. You can send those to controlaccesspodcast@gmail.com to have a chance to have them read out on the podcast. You can also leave them as a comment on SoundCloud or YouTube or wherever you happen to find us. You can put a comment and they might be read out on the show.
Yes.
I think that's everything for this week.
It is.
Yeah, Arevya, where can people find you on the internet if they want more of the stuff you do?
They can find me under the name Arevya everywhere except TikTok, because somebody stole my name, where I am Arevya Gaming. I am at the moment working on upgrading all my TikTok stuff, my Twitch stuff. So I have all these cute little new things that I've been inspired to do. So if you stop by next time I'm live, things will look a lot different. And also I've had 2 new YouTubes up since last time we talked. So I highly recommend, if you want to learn how it is to be a blind game developer, you can check that one out. Yeah. And where can they find you, Laura?
You can find me pretty much everywhere at Laura K Buzz. Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Patreon, that's the one that pays the bills, Blue Sky, Mastodon. I'm on all the things at Laura K Buzz. Search that, you'll find all the stuff I'm up to there. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Control Alt Access. Until then, thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye!